Today's conversation is going to be for the parent who wants to do things differently than how they were raised, but finds themselves slipping into the same patterns they swore that they never would. I'm joined by Tanith Carey, a parenting and psychology author, counselor, mom of two. Tanith has written 12 parenting books published in more than 40 different languages, including the bestseller What's My Child Thinking series. So today we are diving into cycle breaking parenting, why we repeat the patterns we inherit, how to examine the beliefs we carry without realizing it, and how to do this inner work without losing ourselves in the process. So, Tanith, I am so honored to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, my first question, I love to bring just some realness for my audience. So tell them a little bit about like how you got to where you are today, where you're at, just kind of start there and then we'll get into the juicy parts.
Well, I'm very much into the here and now and how I arrived there. So I'm going to start with the here rather than the past. And I am currently, as you say, I am a parenting writer and author. I am the mother of two wonderful daughters. And I am also training for my master's in Gestalt psychotherapy, which feeds very well into here and now awareness, pattern recognition, and just being aware of what's happening in your body in the present moment and how to track that and how to respond differently.
What did you say what was it called?
Gestalt.
Gestalt.
Yeah, it's one of the
Interesting.
modalities.
I
It's
have
probably
never heard of that. So now I'm going to have to go down probably a rabbit hole to look into that.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, no, it's a really, really fascinating modality. And it feeds into a lot of what we're learning about nervous system regulation and the stuff that Gabor Mate and Bessel van der Kolk have brought. And it's all kind of joining up. And originally, when I heard those guys, I was like, oh, this is all new. And I was thinking about training to be a therapist. I was like, oh, where can I find this? Is it something like completely like a new branch? And like, no, it was originally kind of expounded in Gestalt therapy, which was kind of developed in America in the kind of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and now feeds
Interesting.
into a lot of somatic awareness. So yeah, no, it's a really great modality, and I'm really appreciative that I've studied in it.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into it as well. So I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. Okay, well, the first question that I've been dying to ask you is I feel like so many parents say they want to do things differently
Mhm.
than how that they were raised, but they are continuously finding themselves like repeating the same patterns, definitely under stressful situations. So, what is actually happening psychologically when we revert to inherited parenting behaviors, and what does it take to truly interrupt that cycle rather than just suppressing it?
Such great questions. So basically, I think that you said like parenting from the psychology, but actually, we tend to parent a lot in very stressful moments from our nervous system and the reactions of our bodies. And our bodies will always speak quicker than our brains. So if we're in a high conflict parenting moment, we go into fight or flight, and it's likely to bring up a lot of the ways we responded or learned to respond as children. So it just doesn't become about what challenging you or what behavior you're perceiving as challenging in the moment. It's actually bringing many, many years of your childhood into that moment. So I think for cycle breaking parent, what I like to think about is how to separate what's in the here and now and what was in the past for you. Because it's really, our kids, we invite them into the world and it's not their stuff a lot of the time, it's our stuff. So we can do some thoughtful awareness raising. It's not about becoming a different parent, cycle breaking parent. It's about becoming a more conscious parent and spotting the patterns that you might still unconsciously be replaying. And when you bring awareness to that, those patterns start to lose their hold. And you can parent for what your child needs, not what you still need, not your unfinished business as a parent, because that's often what we're doing. It's our unfinished business. And that actually ties back to Gestalt, because Gestalt is all about identifying what the unfinished business is in a person's life and allowing them to become the authentic person that they were meant to be. So that's why it segues so well.
So, say that somebody is just starting this journey off and they don't know even like where to start. Like you're like, yeah, it's in your body. And it sounds so easy to like you and I who, are in this industry like day in, day out, talking about this topic, but a lot of people don't do that. So like where would you say that they should even like start to find awareness or start to even break this cycle?
Mhm, mhm. Well, I know it can sound really daunting because it sounds like unpicking a whole load of stuff that maybe feels really difficult. So I think give yourself grace. I think to begin with, really compassionate to yourself and really grateful for yourself and really pat yourself on the back for even wanting to be a cycle breaking parent. A lot of people don't even want to do that. They just want to like do the same stuff because it's familiar. They haven't really examined whether it worked for them or what effect it had on them. They just do it on autopilot. So the very fact that you're even asking that question is amazing. So I just want to start with that. It is really about being prepared to look back at some of your experience as a child and look at like, what did you experience? And as I say, what is the unfinished business? Like, so basically, how were your emotions handled when you were a child? Like, how did you get approval or recognition from your child? Because that will have formed a lot of what your personality and your patterns are. And it will also may form your relationship with how you think your child should be or behave. So whatever meanings you made of that. So it's about like, I mean, obviously we don't do this with our children. We do this with either us with ourselves, we do this with our partners, we do it with maybe a therapist. We do this away. I mean, this is not to suppress it, but this is not for our kids. What helps for our kids is in the moment that we separate from the past from the present. But the real work of cycle breaking takes place when we're not with our kids, you know what I mean? And then we bring that awareness into it gradually. And it's not an overnight process. It can take several years, but every single tiny step you make towards understanding the patterns and choosing to break them is such a kindness and just a lovely, compassionate, wonderful thing to do for your child.
Yeah, I feel like 2 things that I've noticed, when going through this process is that first off, like, what you've felt, like, as a child, like, for example, like, feeling unloved, like, that definitely was, like, something that I had to work through, but taking, like, a full, like, scope out, like, that really wasn't the situation. Like, my parents loved me, my family loved me, my sisters loved me endlessly, it was just, like, in my mind as well. So, like, I feel like when people are kind of like scared to go into this or like kind of scared to face these, and I'm like, it's not always the truth. Like a lot of it is stuff that's made up. Do you feel like that?
I feel it depends on what meaning you made of it as a child. I mean, I totally understand where you're coming from on that, and that's why sometimes it does help to kind of run that through a filter. I mean, it's like I think if we look at like where how that showed up in your parenting now might be a little bit more helpful. Like, are there any beliefs that you're carrying forward from your childhood? Like the core beliefs that we could bring forward from our childhood might be like big feelings in our children are dangerous,
Yes.
or good children are compliant, or I have to get this right, or my child's behavior is a measure of my worth, or my acceptance of my child is conditional on their behavior. So I think it's like what's happening for you in the here and now is
Yep.
what's really important.
Yeah. No, and there's more to unload out of that, but I just feel like just in
Yeah.
general, like whenever people say like, going back and like processing things, like it does seem like sometimes it is like all negative, situations
Yeah,
and
sure.
a little scary. How do you kind of like combat that with people?
I agree with that. I can see that. I mean, there's a lot of talk, isn't there, about estrangement from parents. I mean, I think what we need there is like our parents came to their parenting maybe with a set of beliefs that they didn't have a chance to examine. They were doing the best with what they had, and to see their inner children is also immensely helpful. This is not about going back to your parents and saying, this is what you got wrong and this is why it's showing up in my parenting. It's not about that. And I don't think that would go particularly well anyway, because everyone's moving at their own stage of awareness. I think it's about like, what residual beliefs have I been left with? What core parenting beliefs have I not quite examined? And do I need to deconstruct them in order not to kind of pass on some of those same ideas to my children and how that might affect their worth? So,
Yes.
yeah.
You said exactly what I was, like, trying to get the message out of, like, that our parents did the best that they could. So, like, I feel like that sometimes is an area where people, think like, "Oh, that's not me." Like, I was raised amazingly, and they don't wanna, like, hurt their, parents' feelings or something, but, like, looking at it like you just said, I think it brings it a little, like, softer for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would say that, like my child was very young when I became a parenting author, and I became a parenting author specifically because I wanted to cycle break. And, with the best intentions, I probably, because I probably overcorrected with my child,
Mhm.
So, like, even when we're trying to be really, really careful, we are going to make mistakes. But what is really important is not about perfection with parenting. There is no such thing as a perfect parenting. And actually, we wouldn't actually want there to be because that would create so much stress on ourselves that we're trying to be perfect the whole time. That would set up an unrealistic model for our children. We just need to be good enough. And by good enough for me is be willing to look up by our behavior, be willing to bring awareness, to be willing to kind of open the door into that awareness to ask ourselves some difficult questions. So, yeah, I mean, we are going to make mistakes with our best intentions.
We're humans. We're
Yeah,
put here to
absolutely.
do that. Second thing to that is, like, one thing that I've learned is that this can be so layered too, and it takes, like, practice. Like, yes,
Mm.
once you find the shadow or the cycle that you wanna break and you put it in, that day and, bring the awareness, whatnot. That's not the end of the, the journey by any means. There's so many more layers, I feel like, that I've had to, like, work through. Is that how you felt through this journey as well?
Yeah, I feel like, because we're dealing with a nervous system, and because we've been doing the same thing for many, many years, it really takes practice to respond differently. So, I mean, I think I would also say that I've practiced it in other relationships too. And I mean, also with my partner to try and slow down, to try and regulate, to notice what's happening in my body when I feel something coming up for me that's making me dysregulated. So it's that kind of practice that kind of builds it up, and so till those new neural pathways are built. So yeah, this just stuff doesn't happen overnight. It really doesn't. And I think we should give ourselves like grace for that. But we're trying. And that is, we're not gonna get, as we say, we're not gonna get it perfect all the right. But the very fact we're trying and trying to do something differently every time, and gradually it gets easier. So yeah, there's no I mean, yeah. I mean, I think if we give ourselves tough deadlines, that probably doesn't help. But just to kind of I think that, repair, like even when we mess up or we really do lose it with our children, I mean, it's such a good role modeling to repair afterwards and just say that, according to the level of development, that name what was happening for you in that moment. Because even by doing that, you're giving your child an emotional vocabulary which they can use, which is absolutely so helpful for their emotional regulation. And also by showing the steps that you took to re-regulate and talking through that, you're also giving them amazing role modeling. So even if you're messing up, that's still a learning opportunity.
Yelling is my kryptonite that I've been working through, and so, like, my four-year-old the other night, he was like, "Mom, could you stop, yelling?" And because we always talk about, like, just how our day was and stuff like that, and I can't even remember the situation, but I was like, yes, I apologize for doing that, and I'm working on it. Like, I think, like, showing your kids that, like, you are not perfect. Because I feel like my oldest, like, she does a lot of, overcompensating, like, stories because she thinks that, like, we expect her to be perfect, and I think, like, once I started to, like, bring, like you said, awareness and show that, like, I don't have it all together. Like, I've seen, like, tremendous growth in how she has, like, talked about her feelings, or, like, she's like, "Hey, mom, I need you right now." And, like, 6 months ago, like, she would have never said that. Like, "I need to talk to you right now, mom." And she's just so well versed in, like, how she is feeling, and I've just, like, seen that, like, come to fruition, and it is so beautiful. So I think that's been, like, the hardest thing is, like you said, like, giving yourself grace and also
I love
just
to hear
talking
that.
through it with your kids.
You're doing a wonderful job, really. And I love the fact that your four-year-old was able to ask you about your yelling.
Yes, he's a do you, know human design? Okay. Well, after this, I'll have to show it to you because it's been life changing. But basically, he is a projector, so he is very like well aware, and he teaches. I mean, he's here to teach me things. So it's just crazy that that plays in. So I guess my next question is: you speak about the importance of parents examining like their own inherited beliefs about childhood, each other before even starting the parenting journey. So what does that like self-inquiry actually look like in a practice? And like what is the most common unconscious beliefs you see parents carrying that they did not realize were shaping their children?
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that goes back to a little bit what I was talking about earlier. Like, for example, you might believe that your child, I mean, this is one that I fell into a little bit, like, my children are a reflection of my worth. Okay. That was one I fell into. What I realized with some awareness was what I was trying to do, because I grew up in a very chaotic childhood where achievement and academic success was protective of me. So I think that I unconsciously carried forward the belief that I needed to make sure that my children were protected by achievement, and I didn't realize I was doing this. So that is a very that is one very close to home example. And of course, I thought I was doing a great job. I was like, oh, okay, no, no. Not realizing that that was actually that had been my need in childhood. So that was quite a big revelation for me. I think for my if I may take another personal example, for example, my husband, he came from a completely different family in which he carried forward unconscious beliefs that big feelings are dangerous. Now that wasn't a problem in my family when my family were all kind of shouting and screaming, but it was just that was a manifestation that you were allowed to do that. But like in his family, crying, for example, was shamed as, quote, turning the taps on or being manipulative. So then what I noticed when we had children together was that we were a very opposite end of the parenting scale, because I was like, no, big feelings are not dangerous. They're just an expression. For him, they were like, oh, no, this is dangerous. They must be suppressed. So we had to work through that. He also had, in my family, it was a pretty free for all. My parents were pretty crazy in some ways. So in his family, it was good children not compliant, and I was completely opposite. So, like, it's interesting actually, when we come together as parents, like these core beliefs start to clash. But
Yeah.
anyway, those are a few. Anyway, so big feelings are dangerous. Good children are compliant. I've got to get this right. Another one I fell for. My child's behavior affects my worth as a person, and acceptance is conditional on behavior, which was not one of mine, but I see that quite a lot.
How did you get your because I feel like that's a really good segue into like getting your spouse to be on board with this like because you can see it from the outside so you can probably name your husband's beliefs more than even probably your own. Talk to me about like how is the best way to like handle that because obviously you're raising your children together so it's a very important piece of the puzzle.
Exactly. Very good point. So another thing, tenet of Gestalt is we can't tell people what to do. They have to work it out for themselves. So there's no point me going, babe, you believe this, you believe that. It's probably not going to go down very well with your partner. So what I had to do was really do some role modeling and just talk to him about mine. That was quite helpful. I won't say that worked all the time because sometimes if I saw him saying things to my daughter when she was crying, I was like, yeah, I wasn't very regulated. But I think that we explored together how different the parents that we'd had been. And then we talked about those comparisons. So there was a lot of discussion about where his core beliefs came from and where my core beliefs came from. Because, I wasn't making out that because I was the therapist and the parenting author that I was perfect. I knew that I had my work to be done. And I invited him to do some of the work. I guess also, I think when you realize that the work works and your home life becomes calmer and your children feel more understood, then there's a real motivation to continue those discussions with your partner.
Also, one question that I had, so, like, I know from the ages, like, 1 through 7 is a very, like the brain is developing in kids, like, that is where they're being programmed, right? I feel like is what I've heard. I there's probably way more better language to that, but, so I feel like I've been, like, putting the pressure on, like because I have a 7-year-old. I'm like, "Oh gosh, after this, like, this is, like, where everything's, like, set in stone." Like, really? What does happen? I'm sure that you can break the beliefs after that they're 7, but, like, why does it make it harder? Kinda walk me through that process.
Okay. Well, 7, you're right, is a completely critical age because before that, children tend to get their sense of self from their parents. So a lot of their ideas about themselves are formed on your opinion of themselves. Now, 7 is a little bit different because they start to see themselves more as individuals within the world with more agency. So I think that's also an issue. I think also up to the age of 7, that's when attachment styles tend to be formed, and that's really based on their sense of safety in the world. So there's a lot of like, and that's very much formed in the nervous system as well. So if they feel safe around you, if their needs are met most of the time and not all of the time, if they feel heard and seen and like they're important to you, that is a pretty strong basis psychologically, a good foundation. But that doesn't mean that stuff can't be changed. I mean, changed and altered in other words, but it means that that's a good foundation for your child.
Yeah,
But then,
okay.
we also know that the brain is still changing until they're like young people are in their mid-20s. So, you know what I mean? There's still plenty of growth and awareness. So, yeah.
And also, like, they don't have as much, I guess, like, baggage, as, like, a 10-year-old rather than, like, now,
Yeah.
I'm 34 years old, like, having to do this work, like, like I was saying, like, there's so many layers, like, they don't have as many layers, so it's not as,
Mhm.
difficult depending on the
Yeah.
situation.
They're simpler beings, I guess, before the age of
Simpler
7.
beings, there we go.
And
I
then the
like
peers can come coming in, and then the friendships, and then other influences start to influence. So, yeah, but they are very sweet and simple. Well, simple, yeah, up to the age of 7.
How old are your children now?
Well, my older child is 24 and my younger child is 21.
Do you still feel like there's areas of, like, parenthood that you're, like, cycle breaking?
Absolutely, yeah. I never
Right.
wanna be a parent. I wanna be like, that 90-year-old mother who's still having awarenesses and is still honest with myself and with other people. I don't wanna be set in my ways. So, yeah, absolutely, I'm still learning, definitely.
I mean, always growing, right? I mean, so many
Always
people
growing,
have.
yeah, absolutely. And I'm pleased, I mean, some people might go, "Oh, okay, well, it's a long time since you have kids," but actually I think because I'm still in it, I'm still speaking to parents, I'm still interviewing them, I'm still writing, books about young childhood, still speaking to like the other, like top experts. And I think that, if you're a parenting kind of, I mean, I don't like the word expert, but sometimes that's what newspapers call me. But like, if you're going to be in this, you have to see how your own parenting works out. I can see the people my children have become in part because of the way I parented them, so I feel I have a more of a bigger picture. So yeah.
So when somebody comes to you, and they know, like, they wanna change, like, do you have, like, a framework for them? What are your suggestions to kind of, like, because I feel like people wanna hear, like a strategy, or, like, they want some, like, actionable items, like, what do you say?
Well, I mean, I think step one is looking at what you experienced in childhood, what meanings you made of that. Again, going back to how is this just showing up in your parenting beliefs that you haven't thought about. Then maybe there may be some work to do about the underlying emotions around underneath your childhood. I mean, there may be still some residual fear, some guilt, some anger that you might have to let go. So, I think journaling, I think inner child work is incredibly important. So I do that a lot. I mean, funnily enough, actually, I keep a picture of myself as a 7-year-old on my bathroom shelf. So when I'm having a shower in the morning, I look at that 7-year-old and I kind of connect with her and I think about what she needed at the time, what she still needs, because my inner parent is still coming. My inner child is still coming up, and I'm also mindful of my children's. Like now they're in their early 20s. What does their inner child need? What do they need in the moment from me? And also my husband's. So I think that's really important. So trying to connect. I think 7 is, I'm really glad you brought up 7 because that's such an important age. Because that's an age when they become more conscious of who they are, what the world thinks of them, and what they need. And so that reconnecting with that 7-year-old part, particularly, I think is really helpful. So get a picture of your 7-year-old self and just inhabit it. Just kind of be in it. Remember what you needed and what you felt you didn't get, and then start working on it from that perspective.
I love that. I'm going to definitely do that. I saw something the other day on the internet, and it made me just, like, it made it just simplify the nervous system, I feel like, in a way I think would be, great and digestible for other people because I feel like nervous system can be a little bit complex, and it was like treat yourself like a toddler. Like it said like nourish meals, nourish, good quality sleep,
Yeah,
movement, and then it said like a little fun, and sunlight, like
yeah.
things that I'm like, yes, we should just start treating ourselves like toddlers.
Absolutely, because how else are you gonna stay regulated if you're tired, stressed, you feel deprived, you feel martyred? I mean, that's just not gonna work. And this is one of the issues I write about a lot is, like, I don't know what it's like where you are, but, like, in England, like, where there are many, many, like, parents trying to do this all on their own, and they don't have the village, and they're living a long way from the grandparents, or the grandparents don't think it's their role, and I mean, my gosh, these poor parents, I feel so, like, so stressful in the modern world, and how can they be regulated for their kids when they feel like they're just trying to survive? So I'm slightly, like, it's a bit controversial, but I'm a slight advocate of, like, doing less, so that we can be present with our children, and just be regulated. I know it's really hard, or just building your village more so that there's a lot of people, a lot of loving, concerned adults around your child, because children were meant to be brought up by the tribe, not by just a couple of grown-ups.
Yeah, but be aware of your tribe too, but
Yeah,
also,
true.
like, it's gonna be imperfect. I feel like that's one thing that I've had to really accept. I moved closer to my family after my 3rd kid, and I'm like, I just have to be a little bit, less
Mhm.
hands-on and just be more accepting of that.
Mhm.
One thing that I was going to say is I agree, like, I think that's what been the biggest shift in my life is, like, simplifying, like, not filling my schedule, like, that's one thing, like, you like, as a functioning family, like, you can't have every single night an activity, like, that's just not possible, like, you have to have, like, connection, family time, so, like, we narrowed it down, son would have, like, jujitsu on Monday, and then, like, Thursday, my daughter would have dance and my other son would have tumbling. So there was 2 nights that we were missing, and then, my husband brought up to me, he's like, "Why don't we bring, my middle son to jujitsu on Thursday nights, and so that we just have, like, one night without, family, dinner." And I'm like, that's been, like, a saving grace for our family. My kids only do 1 activity for the most part. Sometimes our community has, like, 3 weeks of, like, soccer, and I'll throw the kids in, but I'm, like, simplifying your schedule, simplifying your life,
Absolutely.
like, has been a complete life changer for me and my nervous system, so I agree.
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, we're living in a society where we're told we have to optimize our child at every moment, and we kind of buy into this. But actually, what our children need is to be able to feel safe and grow up with a sort of like a nervous system that can relax and play and do all that stuff. And I think, yeah, we can get very pulled into the extracurriculars. I mean, one thing I did with my children was I used the concept of Spark to edit down their extracurriculars. I don't know if you know this concept.
Share,
This
please.
one. So basically, spark is the concept that every child has one or two things that they are naturally drawn to, they find easier than maybe other kids, and they would do even if an adult never got involved. And basically, every kid has one, two, or three of them, basically. And so if your kid is going to, like, yeah, I mean, for my children, it was music.
Mhm.
And, like, it was fairly obvious, like, when we tried other stuff, it was a resistance. They didn't really want to do it. They lost interest. They didn't want to do it when they weren't there. So just to kind of pay attention to what your child is naturally drawn to can really help you decide how many different extracurriculars you really need, or how to manage that, I think, basically, yeah.
That is so good, and that will tie into being more aware, I feel like, to, understand what those 2 to 3 sparks are. I
Definitely. Yeah.
love that. One thing I feel like in society too is, like, there are so many like, when you get pregnant, like, there are so many opinions from other people on parenting and, like, the internet, like, it's just, like, all like, there's so much, I feel like, information out there, and I guess, like, what is your advice to kind of, like, clear that out, to stay, in your own awareness?
Mm, really interesting. I mean, the thing about parenting advice, it tends to go through a lot of cultural changes. So, like, there's been endless fashions to parenting advice. I remember where my mother saying that when I was a baby in the '60s, that you basically woke your baby every three hours to feed them, whether or not they were awake or not. This kind of stuff. So I think to be aware of what cultural messages might be affecting the advice that you're giving, maybe from who you're following, or like what, I mean, often you get sort of, I remember getting some interesting advice from older relatives. I still laugh about like, oh, don't pick a baby up because they're just being manipulative. They're terribly manipulative. What I do in all my books is like basically, which are the What's My Child Thinking books, is basically I go back to what human babies and human children which have always needed, and we don't overcomplicate it. I mean, obviously we look at the science which actually bears that out, but like what they need from you, which is a sense of safety, it's having their needs met most of the time, it's having hopefully a little village around them, it's those kind of things that children have needed for immemorial, human children needed when they were hunter-gatherers, and it's a lot more like we have massively overcomplicated parenting. And I think we know we need to go back to some of the core values. And some of those core values are also what like primates babies need and what animal babies need. And that is just like adults to regulate them, adults to give them a sense of safety, adults to feed them, adults to sort of let them play, adults to let them sort of like feel and explore, those kind of things. So yeah, I'm really, really into that.
Yeah, I feel like as a mother, like we truly know what our children need. You just have to usually
Exactly.
dig a little bit or, do some work
Yeah.
to find it.
Just tune into them, and
Tune
just
in.
like, yeah, tune in. Like, I mean, it's almost like kind of don't let the other stuff get in the way, or be aware of what's yours and what's theirs. When you're with your baby and you're connecting with your baby and you're smiling and laughing and holding eye contact, it's a very intimate relationship, and no one, if you're, children really just, if there's a kind of thing, they just really want you to be in the here and now with them because that's what they are about. They are about like sensation and play and using their senses and being outside and nature. I mean, that's what they want, and we're just like, what this idea that we have to optimize them and accelerate their learning and all that stuff like that. That doesn't create, in my view, from what I've seen, particularly in England, like more achieving children. It just creates more kind of anxious children who think they can never do enough. So I'm very much into kind of a primal parenting thing. It's like, lots of time in nature and yeah, just being in the here and now with them in the present moment.
I want that too.
Said and done.
My last
Yeah.
question is probably, I feel like one of the deepest questions for you is, cycle breaking is often framed as, healing for next generation, but it's also deeply confronting work for parents doing it. So how do you help parents like stay with the discomfort of that process, especially when it brings up a lot of grief and anger and guilt about their own childhood?
I believe that you have to have a lot of compassion for yourself. This is hard, hard work, but it's so worth it because if you have like, cycle breaking, you could be breaking patterns dating back generations of inherited beliefs, So if you're going to be the one that goes, no, no more, not for my kids, I'm not doing this. That is a very brave and courageous thing to do. So first of all, there's that. So give yourself some credit for that. Then, as therapist in training, I'm very much with that. One of the most undervalued skills or least talked about skills is the ability to sit with discomfort and know that it will pass. It is really difficult, I agree, but ultimately on the other side of that door is awareness and growth. So that discomfort will pass, and there's no point trying to suppress it or push it away because that's not the work. So I just think notice that discomfort as the door to doing something differently. And
Yep. I feel like whenever I feel the most discomfort, like is when I know like a huge expansion is on the other side,
yeah,
AKA
absolutely.
3 weeks ago. I just went through like a whole expansion with my health, so I'm like feeling on a very high about like feeling the discomfort.
Mhm.
This has been wonderful. You are a saint for the work that you're doing because also have such a huge passion for, I always say like saving children. But like right now, like I'm saving moms in the work that I'm doing who will, end up, saving, the children. Cause I do feel like there is a big gap right now and our children need us, I feel like more than ever. So the work that you're doing is seriously just amazing. And I love every single bit of it. If my audience wants to find you, support you, hear from you, ask you any questions, like where can they find you?
Thank you, Mackenzie. It's been lovely speaking to you. I would say, yeah, I mean, I have a few Instagram accounts, but like my main one is What's My Child Thinking and What's My Teenager Thinking. And then I also have my therapy account on Tanith Carey Therapy. And then obviously my books, which are like My Pride and Joy. I'm going to show you one here. There we go.
Yay. I love it. That's so cool.
And I know that parents are busy. That's why we just made it so the
Like
format.
whenever she sent it to me before our conversation, and I was like, wait, this is so great that it's all like
I
brightly
know.
colored and like illustrated. I'm like, this is my type.
I know, exactly. Because you moms are really busy, so you don't have time, and, like, you also don't wanna be,
Mhm.
like, going on, like, whatever. You wanna, like, trusted, evidence stuff, which is, like, based on real scenarios, you know? So we like to answer me because I write this with a clinical psychologist with Dr. Angharad Rudkin. We like to kind of really address the questions that other, like, parenting books don't ask, and we like to do it in the most direct and practical way possible because, yeah, so you can use it in the moment when you need it most.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, I just read the baby one that you sent me, so it's been really eye-opening. Definitely gonna grab additional copies, but and I will also link all of her Instagram and link to her books in the show notes. But I appreciate your time so much and look forward to staying connected.
Okay, lovely to speak to you, Mackenzie. Thank you.